Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 20th of January. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Thanks for joining us on this beautiful winter day here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Korea and Japan hold more talks on the issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women before and during World War II. Korean officials say discussions were constructive. As government ministries lay out their plans to achieve reunification with North Korea, President Park Geun-hye urges her ministers to boost the quality of inter-Korean exchanges and promote development projects in the north. Plus, responding to the terror attacks in Paris, the European Union announces plans to engage Muslim nations in counter-terror projects. We start with the latest discussions between Korea and Japan on wartime sex slavery, and Korea says the sixth round of talks on the issue was meaningful and constructive. This following a 3-hour meeting in Tokyo on Monday between Korea's chief delegate Lee Sang-dok and his Japanese counterpart Junichi Ihara. Speaking to reporters after the talks, Lee said they went smoothly and the two sides will continue to make efforts to reach a solution. He added that he couldn't really say too much, given that the talks are supposed to be confidential, but it does appear no breakthrough, significant breakthrough at least, was made. Korea wants a sincere apology from Japan and compensation for the victims. But Tokyo says the issue was dealt with in a bilateral treaty signed in 1965. This meeting comes as Korea and Japan are seeking to improve their frosty relations, as this year marks the 50th anniversary of the normalization of their bilateral ties. Back here in Seoul, and a handful of government ministries have given us a preview of what the country's foreign and North Korea-related policies are going to look like this year. On Monday, they outlined their action plans for 2015 to the president. Top of their agenda was ways to achieve a peaceful reunification with the North. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
In the 70th year after the division of the Korean peninsula, the Unification Ministry wants to launch a new era of reunification. Various events with North Korea are part of the plan, including a test run of a railway across the inter-Korean border around Liberation Day in August. The train will take off from Seoul and make stops at the North Korean border town of Kaesong and the capital Pyongyang before its final stop at Sinuiju. Sound unrealistic? Unification Minister Ryu Gil-jae says the ministry has all the data it needs.
There will need to be discussions between South and North Korea on the issue, but once North Korea agrees, I think the project won't be hard to carry out.
In its talks with the North, South Korea is seeking fundamental solutions to humanitarian issues like reunions for war-separated families. It's also willing to discuss more aid to Pyongyang. The idea includes the construction of multiple farm complexes in North Korea and training for its workers.
We are planning to extend development assistance to North Korea to help it build the groundwork for autogenic capability.
To ensure these reunification efforts will continue past the current administration, the government plans to introduce new legislation. This includes training personnel to prepare for reunification and designating officials at each government ministry. But most of these plans need the cooperation of North Korea, which is still sitting on South Korea's month-old offer for talks. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
In response to the ministry's plans, President Park Geun-hye says it's time for the two Koreas to start discussing preparations for a peaceful unification. Speaking at the joint briefing, the South Korean leader said that to have any form of dialogue, there have to be the right conditions that will make North Korea respond and begin negotiations. Pyongyang has yet to answer Seoul's proposal for talks on inter-Korean issues, including the resumption of reunions of families separated since the Korean War. High-level North Korean officials and a handful of former US diplomats wrapped up their two-day meeting in Singapore on Monday, but the talks centering around Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions ended without much progress. Speaking to reporters after the meeting, North Korea's chief nuclear negotiator, Jung Ho, said that in order to have peace on the Korean peninsula, South Korea and the US need to stop their joint military drills, which Pyongyang views as preparations for war. Seoul and Washington maintain the annual exercises are defensive in nature and will go ahead in March as planned. During the two-day talks, North Korea reportedly indicated a willingness to rejoin the long-stalled six-party talks, but rejected US demands to show concrete steps towards denuclearization. The South Korean military says it's going to use more advanced technology to enhance its defense posture. The move is part of Seoul's plan to mount a so-called creative national defense against North Korea. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Korea's defense ministry has laid out its plans for the year, with a focus on building a creative national defense. As part of the plan, the ministry plans to employ advanced technology to enhance its military capabilities and gain an edge over North Korea. The list of high-tech weaponry includes unmanned surface vehicles that will be capable of conducting offshore missions without jeopardizing the lives of military personnel. There are also plans to use robotics to boost surveillance capabilities on the front lines and equip soldiers with state-of-the-art gear. The ministry is seeking ways to better deal with Pyongyang's nuclear weapons development programs and to better fight North Korean troops, which outnumber the South roughly 2-1. Meanwhile, the ministry reiterated that it will proceed with a large-scale military exercise with the U.S. in March, despite the North's offer to suspend nuclear tests if the Allies halt the drill. The North sees the exercise as a rehearsal for war, while Korea and the U.S. say it is defensive in nature. During this year's drill, the two allies plan to strengthen their joint defense posture and set up a comprehensive plan to counter the communist regime's chemical and biological weaponry. The ministry said that maintaining a strong military posture of readiness guarantees a strong foundation for national defense and sets up a basis for a peaceful unification. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
More details are emerging about what evidence the US government had when it blamed North Korea for the massive hacking attack on Sony Pictures. The New York Times reports a top-secret US cyber operation led by the National Security Agency had penetrated deep into North Korea's computer systems well before the Sony cyber attack with the help of South Korea and other US allies. The paper quotes officials who say the malware was placed into Pyongyang's computer systems as long ago as 2010. So the NSA could track networks and computers used by North Korean hackers. Before the Sony case, the United States had never directly accused another country of launching a cyber attack on it. Senior military officials say the evidence presented to President Barack Obama left him in, quote, no doubt that Pyongyang was responsible. North Korea continues to deny it was involved. Now, in international news, and authorities in Europe are attempting to connect the dots still following the terror attacks in Paris. And while this is happening, the European Union has asked Muslim-majority countries to help them join in this fight against extremism. For more on this, we are joined by Eunice Kim at the News Centre for us. Eunice, we understand the EU is going to reach out to countries kind of ranging really from Turkey to Yemen in this latest move.
That's right, Mark. Good morning. The development came after a meeting in Brussels of EU foreign ministers as well as the chief of the Arab League. The EU's foreign policy chief said the bloc was, for the first time, coming to a real deep awareness of the need to work together that includes those outside of Europe.
What we need is an alliance, a dialogue, a work together in cooperation because we are all facing the same threat. And this, I think, is going to be something we will need to work more and more, not only European Union, Arab countries, but also inside the European Union with the Muslim communities and with the whole concept of minorities.
The investigation part of the Paris terror attacks is still very much ongoing, with dozens of arrests made across Europe. But the discovery of intelligence lapses ahead of the attacks is pushing European authorities that the fight against terror needs to be more comprehensive. Mogherini said the EU will launch anti-terror projects with Muslim-majority nations like Turkey and Arab-speaking countries, which will entail kicking up intelligence sharing, as well as a crackdown on arms trafficking and on radicalism on the internet. In key Muslim nations, she said the EU would post security attachés who would develop anti-terror cooperation and also grow its Arabic language fluency to counter extremist propaganda, as well as extend more communication with that part of the world.
And Eunice, there have been a number of demonstrations, rather violent demonstrations as well, in the Muslim world, protesting the French magazine Charlie Hebdo for its depictions in its latest edition of the Prophet Muhammad.
Right. Any pictorial depiction of the Prophet is, of course, considered blasphemous by many Muslims around the world. And we did see a number of protests over the weekend, including those right here in Korea. And it seems they are continuing into the week. In Chechnya, hundreds of thousands of people came out to protest the cartoon of a weeping Prophet Muhammad on the so-called survivors issue of Charlie Hebdo. The leader of the Russian province said the demonstrations were against those who insult the Muslim religion, as others denounced the West for trying to sow discord between our religions. The state-sponsored protest was the latest to take place after thousands of others made their voices heard in countries like Pakistan and Afghanistan. And in Niger, protests turned violent. Authorities there declared 3 days of mourning after days of angry protests left 10 people dead and dozens others injured as 45 churches, a Christian school and orphanage were left torched. Thousands of Iranians also marched outside the French embassy in Tehran on Monday, chanting "Death to France." Some demanded the closure of the embassy, Mark.
Yes, well, the rippling effects of the Charlie Hebdo tragedy and, of course, that latest magazine cover clearly having implications across the world to this day. Well, thank you, Eunice, and we'll see you back at noon.
See you then.
Said that a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers 15 billion. Now, after what must have been an agonizing 3-week wait, the Korean medical worker that was feared to have contracted Ebola has been declared virus-free and has been discharged from a hospital in Germany. Seoul's foreign ministry says the health professional, who hasn't been identified, was released from hospital on Monday local time after showing no symptoms during the 21-day incubation period for Ebola. The ministry says it's taking care of the staff members' return home. Now, the medical worker, one of Korea's first batch of doctors and nurses sent to Ebola-hit Sierra Leone, was airlifted to Berlin for monitoring after he or she came into contact with a hypodermic needle while collecting blood from an infected patient. There are currently 2 Korean medical teams treating Ebola patients in Sierra Leone. The third and final 10-person team will fly out early next month. The former vice president of Korean Air was in court on Monday facing a handful of charges over the so-called nut rage incident. Cho Hyuna's lawyers denied charges that their client violated the nation's aviation law. Connie Lee has more.
Cho Hyuna faced a judge on Monday at a Seoul court on her first day of trial. And according to her lawyers, she's not guilty for most of the charges. At the hearing, Cho's lawyers said their defendant is deeply sorry about what happened to passengers, attendants, and pilots on board the flight when the alleged incident took place. But they added most of the charges against Cho are not true or have been exaggerated, citing lack of evidence and conflicting testimonies of witnesses. As her lawyer spoke, Cho declined to make any comments, even when invited to speak by the judge. The 40-year-old former vice president of Korean Air faces a slew of charges, including assault on a plane, changing flight plans, and obstructing government investigation. If convicted, Cho can face a maximum 10 years in jail. This high-profile case broke headlines last December when Cho, on a flight from New York to Seoul, allegedly became enraged and abusive after she was served macadamia nuts in a bag instead of on a plate. Cho is believed to have ordered the Korean Air jet to return to the gate just before takeoff in order to deplane the senior flight attendant over the first-class service mistake. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Now, a startling report has come out that shows the extent of inequality in the world. This as the world's elite gather in Davos ahead of the World Economic Forum. New research by Oxfam shows the richest 1% are on track to own a bigger share of the world's wealth than the other 99% by next year. The study shows that the richest of the rich have seen their share of global assets rise from 44% in 2009 to 48% last year. That's equivalent to $2.7 million each. Now, below the richest fifth, 80% of the world's population own just 5.5% of the world's wealth, an average of $3,700 each. Oxfam's director, calling the scale of global inequality staggering, said the organisation will demand urgent action to tackle the growing divide between the rich and the poor when those political and business leaders arrive in Davos this week. Now, moving on to the second report in our 5-part series on startups here in Korea. And today we are going to focus on one specific startup that it really has broken new ground. And we're going to hear about the secret behind its success. With this report, here's our Kim Ji-yeon.
A number of apps have popped up in recent years, enabling users to order food without ever making a phone call. One of these is 배달민족 by a startup company called Ua Brothers, and it's getting a lot of attention. The app, launched in 2010, is known for its user-friendly mobile platform. A commercial for the app, which looks like a movie trailer, went viral on social networking sites and YouTube.
아직도 전단지가 내가 다 정리해줄게.
배달민족 currently dominates the app-based food delivery sector, estimated to be worth 1 trillion Korean won or $928 million. Over 5 million deliveries were made through the app last month alone, with 150,000 restaurants participating nationwide. But what makes this company stand out is its potential, fueled by a major investment from Goldman Sachs.
I think the $36 million investment from Goldman Sachs shows a level of confidence, not just in 배달민족, but the Seoul startup ecosystem. There's a great level of talent. There are wonderful universities here pumping out incredibly educated students. There is investment coming in. And then the most important thing, there's drive and hunger to want to build.
What's the secret behind getting so much attention? What's the secret behind your success?
Sure. I think one of the best things about this company is that because of the structure that we have, anybody at any level can voice their opinion, and their opinion is extremely valuable.
This flat structure helps to better cater to consumer trends with the timely execution of ideas. It also sets the company apart from most Korean firms and startups that follow a top-down structure. So what's next? It plans to broaden its takeout focus to include all types of restaurants. The company also wants to go global. It has already partnered up with Line, a mobile messaging app owned by Korea's largest portal Naver, to expand into Japan. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off with the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games, as reports have come out that the hockey venue might be moved to Seoul in order to lessen the financial burden. Now, according to reports coming out from the meetings amongst the organizers of the Winter Games, they're discussing the possibility of holding the hockey games in Seoul, which will save at least $100 million. And despite organizers going against the idea of sharing the hosting rights, moving just the hockey venue might be an option the organizers are willing to go with. Now, confidence can be great in sports, but sometimes overconfidence might hurt the team. Now, whether it be overconfidence or just confidence, Uzbekistan's head coach showed some of that in a press conference on Monday. with Uzbekistan advancing to the quarterfinals after their 3-1 win over Saudi Arabia on Sunday. They're set to face off against Group A's first-place team Korea on Thursday. And according to head coach Marjalal Kasimov, he promises to win the match. And with Uzbekistan's captain Server Zeprov currently playing in the K-League Classic, he trusts the 32-year-old to lead the way to the semifinals of the 2015 Asian Cup. Now, just because the Korean national football teams had some issues with scoring doesn't mean the 2015 Asian Cup was lacking the goals. In fact, for the first time in 85 years of international football competition, has been no draws in the first 20 matches in the group stage. Now, according to the Asian Football Confederation, 20 consecutive matches without a single draw is a new record in all international competitions, including the World Cup and the Euro. And in those 20 matches, there has been 53 goals scored, with each match averaging an astonishing 2.65 goals per match. Now, when Jung Ho signed a 4-year deal with the Pittsburgh Pirates over the weekend, the next question was, where is he going to play? Or his former manager isn't taking any chances and is helping him learn a new position, just in case. Now, with Jung Ho currently working out with his now former team, the Nexen Heroes, manager Young Kyung-yup is helping Kang-in playing second base, just in case he might need to play the position with the Pittsburgh Pirates. While the former Nexen shortstop is set to compete for the shortstop position with Jordy Mercer, there is a chance that he might play second base in the long term, with reports of Neil Walker not signing an extension with the team. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. It's Daehan, the last of the 24 solar terms today. Daehan is also one of the coldest time of the year, and we surely are having a freezing start to the day, and still the sensory readings are below minus degrees Celsius here in Seoul. But afternoon highs will bounce back to the mild side, climbing above the seasonal averages. Also, it's much brighter today, but sunshine later will be mixed with clouds, and today we could get to breathe clearly as the level of fine dust have dropped down to the average. With that, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the daytime highs so will peak at 3, while Daegu and Gwangju will rise to 8, and Busan will top out at 9 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will see a high of 9, while Daejeon and Dokdo will climb up to 6 and 5 respectively. Now, rain is forecast for most parts tomorrow, except Seoul and the surrounding areas. But it seems like another band of either snow or rain is in the forecast nationwide on Thursday morning. But temperatures should remain on the mild side for the rest of the week. That's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
And that's where we have to leave it for now. There are plenty more stories on our website, and we'll be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. So until then, goodbye.